Alright, number 2, we're asked to find the absolute extrema of this function on this interval. So there's a three-step process involved here. First, we have to check that the extreme value theorem applies. So for the extreme value theorem to apply, to know that we get a max and a min, we need to have a continuous function on a closed bounded interval. So since f is continuous, because it's just combinations of sign here, since f is continuous and negative pi to pi is a closed bounded interval, the extreme value theorem applies. So we know f attains a max and a min on the interval negative pi pi. Okay, we have a continuous function on a closed bounded interval. The extreme value theorem guarantees us that we can find the absolute max and absolute min. So the next step is trying to figure out where these things could be. As we mentioned in class, they could occur at the endpoints, or it could occur on the inside of the interval. So if we're looking on the inside of the interval, if we have a max or a min on the inside of the interval, it's got to be a relative max or a min, which means Fermat's theorem tells us that has to happen at a critical value. So our second step is to find the critical values of f, which lie on the interval negative pi to pi. So to do that, I take the derivative. The derivative of sine of 2x is 2 cosine 2x minus 2 cosine x. This derivative always exists, so we don't have to worry about finding critical values where it fails to exist. So what I do now is I have to set it equal to 0. So I need to solve this trig equation. Now thinking back to trigonometry, one of the first complexity in this problem is that I have different angles, cosine 2x and cosine x. So what I need to do is convert the cosine of 2x into cosine x's. So I'm going to use a trigonometric identity. Cosine 2x is 2 cosine squared x minus 1. Now before I make that substitution, I can factor out that 2. Now I'll substitute that in. And so I get this. So if I think of this as a quadratic, it's 2u squared minus u minus 1. And I can factor that, okay? So I'm going to factor this quadratic using cosine as u. And I get 2 cosine x and this is going to be 2 cosine x plus 1 cosine x minus 1. So if you multiply that out, you get your 2 cosine squared minus 2 cosine x plus cosine x minus 1. So for this to equal 0, the 2 cosine x plus 1 has to be 0, so that gives us cosine x is minus a half, or cosine x equals 1. Now I'm looking for the solutions to this on the interval negative pi to pi. So between negative pi and pi, so if I think unit circle, I'm thinking here and here. Where's cosine going to be negative? Will be negative in quadrant 3 and in quadrant 2. So in quadrant 3, that'd be negative 2 pi over 3. and then positive 2 pi over 3, because we're in the range negative pi to pi. Where's cosine equal to 1? Negative pi to pi, 0. So these are the critical values. Negative 2 pi over 3, 2 pi over 3, and 0. So now at part 3 we're going to evaluate f at the endpoints and the critical values. So I need f of negative pi, f of negative 2 pi over 3, f at 0, f of 2 pi over 3, f at pi. So let's plug these in. Negative pi, I get the sine of negative 2 pi, minus 2 times the sine of negative pi. That gives me 0. Plug in negative 2 pi over 3. The sine of negative 4 pi over 3, minus 2 times the sine of negative 2 pi over 3. Well, let's think back to unit circle. Where's negative 4 pi over 3? Would be there in quadrant 2. So it's going to be a positive number. So this is square root 3 over 2. Two times the sine of negative 2 pi over 3. Negative 2 pi over 3 is going to be in quadrant 3. So it's going to have a negative sign. So that's radical 3 over 2 plus 2 radical 3 over 2, which is 3 radical 3 over 2. Substitute in 0. Sine of 0 is 0. Substitute in now 2 pi over 3. I substitute in 2 pi over 3. I get the sine of 4 pi over 3. Minus 2 times the sine of 2 pi over 3. So I get negative 3 square root of 3 over 2. And I plug in pi and I get 0 again. So what's the biggest number I get out of this? That one. So this is the maximum of f. And where's the smallest? It's this one right here. So f attains a maximum of 3 square root 3 over 2 at x equals negative 2 pi over 3. It attains a minimum of negative 3 square root of 3 over 2 at x equals negative 2 pi over 3. So that'll do it for checkpoint quiz 10.